Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey, who became the great Frederick Douglass, born in 1818, when born and separated from his mother, Harriet Bailey. Douglass followed who to be a white man, maybe his owner, Aaron Anthony. As a young slave at the age of 12, Douglass was being taught the alphabet and breaking the law against teaching slaves to read. After the leader found out of his teachings, he ordered them to be stopped. Then he started to learn from the neighborhood white children that began to notice at the age of 12 the clarifying and the defining their views of freedom and human rights. Douglass began teaching slaves to read in the New Testament at the Sabbath school on the plantation. As the word got, slave owners were furious about these teachings. They gathered up and took Douglass to the slave breakers to be whipped. Douglass tried to escape multiple times. His first time was unsuccessful. He tried to escape from Mr. Freeman, who hired him from his previous owner. In 1836, he escaped from his new owner, Covey, and who was unsuccessful again. In 1838, he escaped by getting on a train to Harvey Grace, Maryland, and he made it this time. And disguised as a sailor uniform, holding identification papers given to free black seamen, he got on the Syracuse River by the ferry at the Harvey. Getting on the train in Wilmington, Delaware, got on a steamboat to Quaker City, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He finally took to New York. That journey took lesser than 24 hours. Douglass traveled to Massachusetts, joined lots of organizations at the New Bedford. That includes a lot of black churches and attending abolitionist meetings. Then subscribing to the William Lloyd Garrison's weekly journal, The Liberator. Seeing him speaking in 1841 at the Bristol Anti-Slavery Society. Douglass asked to speak to one of these meetings, telling him his early life stories and encouraged him to become an anti-slavery leader. Garrison was impressed with Douglass, wrote him in The Liberator. Several days later, Douglass had said his first speech at the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society annual convention. In the Massachusetts, at the age of 23, gave a good speech on how it was to be a slave. In 1843, Douglass attended into the American Anti-Slavery Society conventions, projects as a site-month tour on the meeting halls in the Eastern and Midwestern, and attended significant conventions. August of 1845, Douglass had spent 2 years in Great Britain and Ireland, giving lots of lectures. He was most popular in London, giving repetition speeches. Douglass was quoted that in England, he was treated not as a color, but as a man. In the trip, Douglass became free. In 1856, Douglass got to meet Thomas Carlson, one of the last survivors of that had persuaded Great Britain and abolished slavery. Douglass believed that education was the key to be a better life for African Americans. He fought to have the same education for African American children. Douglass had to flee to Canada because he was unacquainted with John Brown, despairing of Brown's plan to start armed slavery rebellion in the South. Douglass came to the President Abraham Lincoln in 1863 about the treatment of the black soldiers. Douglass believed to gain freedom, African Americans had to guard their own rights. 1851, Douglass had merged with the North Star with Gerrit Smith Liberty Paper Party. That had made Frederick Douglass paper as a published until 1860. Douglass would shift opinions on the politics difference that had shifted between him and Garrison. By the time of the Civil War, Douglass became one of the most popular black men in the states. Douglass and other abolitionists argued because of the war was to end slavery, and the other abolitionists thought that African Americans should fight for their freedom. Douglass showed in views of the newspaper and some speeches that of the night of December 31st, 1862, Lincoln issued the Impeachment Proclamation that had freed slaves from were parts of the Confederate. After the war, Douglass was given political positions. He was president of the Recreation Air Freedmen's Savings Bank. Marshal of the District of Columbia, Douglass became in charge of affairs for the Dominican Republic for 2 years, then resigned. Moved to D.C. after his house and burnt down in Rochester, New York. Lost the full issue of the North Star. Douglass was supporter of USS Grant. 1872, he was nominated vice president, being the first African American. He wasn't even aware that he was even nominated. Douglass continued to speak engagements. He spoke at many colleges around the country during the Reconstruction era. Douglass died on February 20, 1895. After attending the National Council of Women meeting, when he got home, he had a massive heart attack. Douglass was a very important man and always will be remembered.